Hello, everybody. This is the HDG news. So if there is no news, we make news here. Um, Today or this evening, I would like to speak about the boundaries between and the definitions of the public and private sphere of life. I believe it's fair to say, and probably most historians do say, that with the coming of the modern age and the secular age, people have more and more of a private life. People used to belong to the church or belong to their feudal lords or to village responsibilities and so on. But now there's a tremendous sense of freedom of private life. And yet at the same time, we have public responsibilities. For example, when you drive your car, it's your car and you can go where you want, but there are rules of the road. There are speed limits, there are policemen, policewomen that can stop you and so on. So let's say you're out just to have fun with your friends and the police pull you over. That's an example of the intersecting, the colliding of the public and the private. You're just out in a private engagement. Suddenly the public in the form of a police officer stops you. So we earn money and the money belongs to us, and yet we have to pay taxes to the public. So there's all these, for example, when you go out, you have to dress yourself. I mean, public nudity is not yet legal. And so there's all these, so life is sort of this tension or this balancing between public and private life. And so where is the appropriate place to draw the line? That really is the basis of law. In other words, what should be left just to custom? For example, you may live in a place where people greet each other in the street. They smile and they say, hello, how are you? So if you don't say hello, or if someone says hello to you and you say, go to hell, that's not illegal. It's extremely rude. And if people perceive that you're not joking, you really mean it, then you won't have many friends. So, I mean, certain things are actually illegal and certain things are simply bad manners, or that's not the way we do things. So, a custom, social pressure, like let's say you live in a place where people around you give you dirty looks because you didn't water your lawn and everyone waters their lawn. So that's a certain level of public pressure, your community. But if you actually break a law and you are arrested and incarcerated or something happens, so then that's a case where the public actually takes control of your life because the public feels that you somehow violated the public trust. So I'll add something else here and then we'll try to get a picture. There's the idea of a social contract, that just like when you sign a contract, you get certain benefits and then you pay a certain price. Like if you, for example, let's say you go to some website and you want to buy, I don't know, let's say a new refrigerator, which I actually did a day or two ago. It's supposed to be delivered here tomorrow. So maybe we'll have a live Facebook show just to welcome my new Vedic refrigerator. But anyway, when I bought that refrigerator, I entered into a contract that a company, this, I don't want to say the name of the store because it may seem like a guru endorsement. But anyway, I called up the store, so I'm giving them a certain amount of money and they're giving me a refrigerator. That's a contract, quid pro quo. You give me something, I give you something. And so if you think about it, life in society is a contract. If you go live out in the jungle or forest or desert or up in a mountain, if you go live somewhere basically where no one else wants to live, you can do whatever you want. You can put your clothes on, you can take your clothes off, you can yell and shout, you can run around, there are no stop signs, there are no traffic lights, and basically no one knows you're there, no one cares that you're there. So if you go and live like that, you have an extraordinary amount of freedom, but it is a bit lonely, and there are not many facilities. If you feel like going to a nice vegan restaurant, you're not going to find one out in the desert or up in the mountains. So there are no libraries, there are no Hare Krishna temples. That's the big loss. So it's a trade-off, it's a contract. When you live in a city, you have to stop at red lights, you have to wait because there may be traffic, or things are more expensive. So you have to give a lot, but then you get a lot. So then the question is, do you want to sign that social contract? Do you want to live in a particular city? Do you prefer a small town where you get more peace but less shopping, for example? As if. Anyway, so whenever you live in a community or society, this city, this country, that state, wherever you go, there is a contractual relationship, because the nature of human life is give and take. We cannot live absolutely alone, or very few people can do that. And even if you live absolutely alone and you have to feed yourself, and whatever food you're taking came from the universe, came from God, so you have to pay for that. So that entangles you in obligations. So you can really make a point that the nature of life in this world is there are always obligations, there are always contractual options. You simply have to decide where you want to sign up, and where you feel you can pursue most effectively your rational self-interest. That's the general picture of life as contractual. But then, where does the state, meaning the government, at what point do they have a legitimate, a reasonable interest in your behavior? Like, you can say, I don't want to live in a police state, it's no one's business what I do. But that's not always true. That's not always true. For example, let's say you live in a village at the side of a river, and the river goes through your land. So that part of the river is in fact on your land, but you pollute the river. You throw something into the river that pollutes it, and then that water flows down to your neighbor's land and poisons all his animals or poisons his children. And so you can say, I have a right to do what I want on my land. Not always. When your behavior starts to significantly impact other people's lives, at that point, the society has a legitimate right or obligation to somehow regulate your behavior. For example, imagine it's your neighbor that's poisoning the river. And so when the river comes down to your land, you can't drink it, or if your children drink it, they'll die, your animals die, and so on. So you're going to demand that the government stop this fool upriver from poisoning the water that's coming through your land. To give another example, in the Revolutionary War, in which America was able to free itself from England, and was that really a good thing that America became separate from England? We won't discuss that now. But anyway, the main argument of the American colonists, who up to the point the Revolutionary War started, almost up to the day it started, they were English. They considered themselves to be English citizens. In fact, that was their main complaint, that even though they were loyal English citizens, they were not given the rights of English citizens. At that time in Europe, the citizens, the ordinary people of England, had in some ways significantly more rights than in other countries. That's another story. So the slogan of the revolutionary colonialists became no taxation without representation. In other words, you cannot tax us if we do not have a place at the table to take part in the government processes that produce the taxes. Because the taxes obviously were passed into law in the British Parliament, and people all over Britain could elect people to Parliament. In that sense, through their representatives, they had a say in the taxes. but not in America. So that was their argument. But let's take that general principle, no taxation without representation. Now let's say, for example, the sexual act, which I hope most people would consider to be a private act. So is sexual intercourse, let's say not merely sexual intercourse, but let's say reproductive behavior. Let's say engaging in an act of reproduction in which a woman becomes pregnant and has a child. Is that a private act or a public act? Now, most people would say, oh, that's obviously private. It's nobody's business. But is it? What if we have social science, reliable social science, which we do, that demonstrates that when irresponsible people or ignorant people have children and don't know how to raise them properly, or simply don't care about them that much, or the father is not there because he's not really interested. In other words, we have a situation where we're going to get bad parenting. Now, we know the law is that if parenting is really bad, the state can intervene and actually take the child away. That the state can decide through legal channels that this mother or that father or both of them are simply unfit to raise this child, and in fact the child is suffering unnecessarily with these parents, so much that the child should be removed from those parents. That happens, of course, every day. It's something that happens in this world. So further, social science shows that children that grow up with bad parenting or broken homes are more likely to engage in antisocial behavior. They're more likely to engage in substance abuse, more likely to commit suicide, more likely to engage in self-destructive behavior. It's not that everyone does this, but a higher percentage of people. So now if it turns out to be the case, and it does, that where there is bad parenting or where there's a broken home, statistically, more often than otherwise, society will be taxed. Because if a child grows up unloved, or you could say under or misparented, underparented, misparented, and that child engages in antisocial behavior such as destroying public property, committing violent crimes, or simply becoming hooked, addicted to some form of drug or alcohol, and therefore having to depend on taxpayers' money in the form of welfare. In all these cases, society is literally being taxed. And so if you go back to the battle cry of the American Revolution, no taxation without representation, what that means is that if people engage in reproduction in a way that taxes society, that poses a threat to society because people are parenting their children in a way that makes it more likely their child will become violent or will become self-destructive. If that's the case, then society has a rational, justifiable interest in that reproductive act. In the case where it is entirely predictable that the people reproducing are not really willing or able to raise the child properly. And so if we accept this principle of no taxation without representation, then society does have a legitimate interest in discouraging harmful parenting, which taxes society and simply causes evil in the world. Evil in the sense of violent crime, innocent people being killed, or people being mutilated or killed by drunk drivers, lives destroyed, families destroyed. This is serious business. And it gets into certain areas which you could say are more gray areas, but still warrant discussion. For example, nowadays, maybe this is the last thing I'll discuss, or maybe I'll save that till tomorrow. Tomorrow, I want to discuss the concept of body shaming. Body shaming. These are coming attractions. You know, if you ever wanted to hear body shaming, let's see if we can get a definition for that. Body shaming, what is it and why do we do it? And the example I want to talk about tomorrow is a case where, let's say, a man or a woman dresses indecently in a sort of blatantly, patently erotic manner and goes out in public, and some people say this is not decent, and then other people say you're body shaming me. Of course, there's also body shaming if someone is, or some people believe that person is overweight, or a person is not as beautiful as other people. So, you know, different kinds of body shaming, which, by the way, I'm not justifying in any way. But there's one I've noticed where that if people dress indecently in public and someone says that's not decent, then you are body shaming that person. So we've talked about society's vested, rational, justifiable interest in how people reproduce, because bad parenting taxes society severely, even costs innocent lives. What about decency? Is that just like police state stuff? Like you say, like, okay, there's a law that you have to dress decently when you go out in public. Does that mean we live in a police state? Is it justifiable? So we'll talk about that tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you all have a great evening, morning, or middle of the day, depending on what part of the world you're in. And sayonara from Los Angeles, California. Zip code 90024. Hare Krishna.